Hari Om, good evening. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the continuation of the discussion on the foundational texts of Indian philosophy. This meeting will be recorded and it will be posted on YouTube. So if you have missed any of the previous discussions, you may find it on YouTube. Also, there will be a question and answer segment at the end of the discussions. If you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask. Please use the raise hand feature of Zoom in order to maintain the queue. If you are not speaking, please mute yourselves in order to minimize the disturbances. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Thank you, Prajwal. So we are continuing our discussion on the philosophy of Ramanuja. It's called Viśiṣṭādvaita philosophy. So I think I already gave 2-3 sessions on some of the fundamental doctrines of Viśiṣṭādvaita. And I think the last session I gave an important discussion on prapatti and bhakti. These are two important concepts in Ramanuja system. So according to him, as I mentioned earlier, these are two important principles: bhakti, the devotion, and prapatti, and self-surrender. Now, the most important statement on prapatti, that is self-surrender, that occurs in the Bhagavad Gita, on which Ramanuja wrote a very important commentary. That statement comes towards the end of the 18th chapter, not exactly at the end. I think it's the 66th verse of Bhagavad Gita. And the verse is this: Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarvapapebhyo mokshashyami ma sucha. This is the statement, which actually says that you give up all your sadhanas, spiritual disciplines, and you take complete refuge in me. You practice this ultimate discipline of self-surrender. It's called prapatti, that we already discussed and defined in the earlier sessions. And then you have no room to worry. You will have no problem. I shall liberate you. I shall liberate you by giving you moksha. This is the statement. Now, this is a very profound statement in the Ramanuja system. Now, here, if you look at the statement, Sarva Dharman Parityajya, give up all dharmas. Now, if you read an English translation, which can be terribly misleading, it may tell you give up all dharmas. And then you go to Monier, Williams and Apte and find out dharma means righteousness. So you give up all righteousness and I shall give you liberation. So it can be terribly, very profoundly, catastrophically misleading. But that is not the implication here. What Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna is this: if you feel that you are incapable of practicing any of the disciplines that I have already outlined in the early chapters, Bhakti Yoga as a very important discipline was outlined and explained in the 12th chapter, Karma Yoga in the 3rd chapter and also in many other places, Dhyana Yoga, Purushottama Yoga, and of course Jnana Yoga and Raja Yoga, all these are being expounded and described in so many different ways by Lord Krishna. Now, suppose you reach a stage where you feel you are incapable of doing any of this. That is Akinchanyam and Ananyagatitvam. And you also feel that you are totally incapable of doing anything. Totally you are a destitute, helpless. And you don't want to turn in any other direction. You want to look upon the Lord as the only refuge. And you surrender Atman Nikshepa. And you feel yourself completely lost, Karpanya. And also you have strong faith, Mahavishwasa. Rakshasidi Vishwasa Goptrutva Varanam Tatha. And also you look upon me as your protector. Then you give up everything and take refuge in me, and I shall take care of your spiritual responsibility. Now the important principle to remember is, this is not a concept. It is not a doctrine. It is not an idea. It's a natural state of one's spiritual evolution along the path of devotional disciplines. Again, it is not supposed to be a national ideal. Rather, it is a spiritual discipline to be practiced by an individual spiritual seeker. Now, this state of total surrender, looking upon oneself as completely helpless, destitute, and looking upon God as the only refuge, this idea may be found in many other traditions, many other mystical traditions. So it is a state of spiritual evolution that one attains, and not a doctrine that you believe in. People may simplify. They say, if you believe in, you are helpless, take refuge in God. Well, it doesn't work that way, because a person, a spiritual seeker who takes refuge in God should have already exhausted himself and all his available means, all other tools at his disposal. Then only he will reach a state of this ananyagaditvam. He has knocked at all other doors. They didn't open. Finally, he is knocking at the door of the Lord, and it opens. And he should knock at the door with that state of mind, where he should think completely himself. He should consider himself to be helpless, totally incapable of all these, of any other work. No, so I shall try to, before explaining this Charama Sloka, it is in the 18th chapter of the Gita, Sarvadharman Paridijya. Before that, I shall try to give maybe a simple idea of the differences between bhakti and prapatti. Now, bhakti yoga is a discipline. You should study scriptures. You should go to temple or a church or any place of worship. You should pray. You should practice nishkarma karma. Nimitta matram bhava savvisajin. You should look upon yourself as an instrument in the hands of God. And then you also need an ability to study the scriptures and also an ability to practice spiritual disciplines. In fact, that's why Lord Krishna says in the 12th chapter, Santushta Satadam Yogi Yadatma Dridhanischeka. A bhakta, a devotee, should be always in a state of total contentment, fulfillment. And also he should always practice self-restraint. And also, surprisingly, he needs a strong willpower. His mind should be made of steel, because you have to face a lot of difficulties. You are going on a pilgrimage. You should have the determination that you reach your destination. You are beginning to study an important devotional classic. You need a lot of hard work, discipline. You should persist in your studies. Sometimes there will be difficulties. still you should continue. Again, you want to pray, and you want to go to a nearby place of worship. The weather is bad. Still, you should put full faith on God and a strong willpower. You should go and pray. And also, it's very important that there are certain formalities that you should follow. You should have a lot of patience. And through these spiritual disciplines, you exhaust your prarabdha karmas. So, there are three types of karmas behind our human existence. This karma is divided into sanchita, prarabdha and agamika. The cause of the present embodiment, this life, where we are born, what we are doing, our tendencies, all these are manifestations of prarabdha karmas. Karmas which have already started fruition. They are already manifesting. And there are still karmas which have not started manifesting. It is called sanchita karma, accumulated karmas. There are karmas that we are still going to, karma phalas, that we are going to generate in the present life, agame karmas. So through spiritual disciplines, through scriptural studies, through puja, prayers, confessions, or whatever may be, different traditions, you should exhaust the prarabdha karmas. And again, it is a difficult path. You can always find among great devotees who have to face lots of challenges and problems. So they should have an iron will. And also, a person practicing bhakti yoga, the path of bhakti or devotion, should also practice yamas and niyamas, all mentioned in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. And then also, you are not very sure that you will get liberation in this present life. This is bhakti yoga. It is more of a formality. There is a lot of uncertainty. A lot of your success depends upon your own effort, your own qualities and circumstances. So there can be a lot of unknown dangers and challenges. That's bhakti yoga. But then prapatti, sharanagati, it is quick, fast, and it's like hotline. And you don't have to be well versed in the knowledge of scriptural studies related to the practice of discipline. And you may feel you are not capable of getting up in the morning and prayer and meditation. You are lazy or you are sick, maybe physically, mentally handicapped. So you cannot go to a church or a temple or a synagogue or a place of worship. Maybe you don't have the education to read the scriptures or devotional philosophical ideas. And also, in ancient times in India, you find there were many restrictions. There were a lot of non-egalitarian restrictions. Now they are all gone, fortunately. So, on the other hand, prapatti, self-surrender, can be practiced by anyone, by anybody, self-surrender. There is for example, is an interesting story of a saint who was actually a hunter. It's a story of a great saint who lived in India. He was living in a forest. He was a poor hunter, illiterate, but he had totally surrendered himself to the Lord. It so happened that there was a small temple in a thick forest, and every day the priest will come from the nearby village and he will perform all the formal rituals. He is a devotee practicing bhakti yoga. So he will take bath in the morning, he will come to the temple, he will offer flowers, sandal paste, all those things, and will practice a lot of austerity, discipline, punctuality, purity, everything. So every day he used to offer fruits, sweets, use Ganga gel, Ganga water. He was a temple dedicated to Shiva, Lord Shiva. And in the same forest there was a hunter. He was an illiterate man, but he was very pure. He had practiced this prapatti, self-surrender, sharanagati, complete, total self-surrender to the Lord. So he also wanted to practice some spiritual discipline, but he didn't know what to do. He was a hunter, he lived by hunting animals. So every day he will come and he will remove all the flowers which are put on the Shiva image, and he will remove them and he will offer pieces of meat, and he will offer some crude things and he will go away. So every next day morning again the priest will come and he will find the image defiled. He did not know. He may have thought some evil people are doing mischief, but it was a great devotee. So one day it so happened that the hunter felt that blood was coming out of one of the eyes of Lord Shiva. So he pierced his own eyes out and offered. Somehow when this news came to the attention of the local king, he admired and recognized him, and the priest fell at his feet. Anyway, these are different, there are various versions. Many, not just one story. There are innumerable such stories that you find in ancient devotional tradition. On the one hand is extreme orthodoxy. On the other hand, this sublime ideal of the highest devotion. So that's an important thing about this Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is formal. It needs a lot of discipline. It also requires a lot of important formal practices. But at the same time, it depends upon the purity, the sincerity of the seeker. Again, it is not assured of liberation. But prapatti, self-surrender, is a straight road leading to liberation. That's why some of the well-known scriptures, important classical works on devotion philosophy, they give different definitions to the bhakti. So the Narada Bhakti Sutras, one important work. Narada defines bhakti, Satu Asmin Parama Prema Rupa. Supreme love for God is bhakti, devotion. And Shandilya, he says, Sa Paranuraktihi Ishware, the same, meaning in the same, supreme love, intimate love, devotion to God. This is bhakti. So, bhakti is a formal path. So you are not reached a state where you look upon yourself as totally helpless, and you need the help of the Lord Himself, His grace. Then prapatti is the only path. But prapatti can be practiced only when we reach a very high level of mental purity. It's an important thing. When we have a doubt, when we postpone, or when we slowly speculate and slowly move, bhakti. When we can take a bold decision, close the bargain, then and there, then prapatti, self-surrender. But one should not imagine self-surrender is easy, so I would rather have that. So you cannot buy it in the market. So one should reach a state of spiritual evolution to be fit to practice self-surrender. So one should not imagine, well, bhakti yoga, the path of devotion, it requires daily, it's a weekly disciplines, going to a place of worship, reading scriptures, attending prayers. So it's very difficult, driving, traffic delays and fuel cost, and so I would rather go for self-surrender. It is not possible. Because self-surrender happens, and it is possible only when a person reaches that state. A person who has surrendered himself, he will have zero complaint even when there is a problem. Arakshidam tishtadi deivarakshidam surakshidam deivakhatam vinashyati. It's a famous statement in the Bhagavata Purana. It's the most profound work on Hindu devotional philosophy, Bhagavata Purana. 12 skandhas, 12 sections, 12 books, 335 chapters, more than 18,000 verses. Very profound. It is the greatest book on Hindu devotional philosophy, devotional tradition. And there, the greatest devotee, Prahlada, says, Arakshidam tishtadi deivarakshidam. Those who are not protected by other people, by the system, by the state, by society, but the one who takes refuge in the Lord, he is rakshidam, means he is protected. Arakshidam means he is not protected by the state, the society, or the system, has no wealth, not a big high-profile person, a simple, humble man. So he is arakshidam, he is unprotected. But he is the most well-protected person, rakshidam, because he stands, he is able to survive, he is able to, he continues to flourish in his devotional life. So arakshidam tishtati deivarakshidam. Why? Because he is protected by the Lord. The one who is unprotected by other human beings, but protected by God, he remains intact. He has no problem. He survives. Then, surakshidam deivakadam vinashyati. Those who are protected by the system, by the society, those who are born with a silver spoon in their mouth, people who are born to rich privileges, riches and privileges and certain inherent privileges, they are protected by the social circumstances and conditions. So that is surakshidam. But devakadam vinashyati. But if they are not protected by the Lord, by God, vinashyati devakadam, he is killed or destroyed by his own destiny. So those who are not protected by other persons, or those who are unprotected by the society, by the circumstances, by the privilege, by the social conditions, but those who are protected by the Lord, they survive. And those who are protected by the circumstances, but unprotected by the Lord, they perish. So this is the mind of every mystic. You can imagine innumerable, the stories are unending. The long stories of the Christian mystics in medieval Christianity. Most of them had to go through, not all, but many of them had to go through a lot of unpleasant, difficult circumstances, tortures and persecutions by the ecclesiastical, the clerical hierarchy. And they received only post-mortem recognition. So they were unprotected by the church, but protected by the Lord. So this is an important. So you can find in all traditions you find. Mirabai was a great woman saint of India. She had to suffer a lot. She was born as a queen, highly privileged society, social conditions, but you suffer a lot. There are many innumerable stories. So, but then the point is, Bhakti Yoga is more elaborate, assured, slow process. So that's why, there are 9 different methods of practicing Bhakti Yoga. Sravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Padasevanam, Archanam Bandanam, Dasim Sakhyam Atmanivedanam. Idi Pumsarpida Vishnu, Bhaktische Navalakshana, Kriyade Bhagavatanya, Tanmane Adhitamuttamam. So, you can find these 4 verses comes in the Bhagavata Purana. These are very interesting. So, these are the 9 disciplines. That is singing or hearing about God, singing about His greatness, glory, remembering God all the time, serving Him through so many different ways, to puja or any kind of devotional practices, worshipping Him and paying obeisance to Him, practicing the attitude of a servant to Him, cultivating an intimate spiritual love with God, and also surrendering one's own efforts, everything to the Lord. All these are 9 disciplines. So that's why Iti Pumsarpida Vishnu Bhaktisched Navalakshana. These are 9 disciplines that anyone can practice in Bhakti tradition. Kriyade Bhagavati Adhva Tanmanne Adhidam Uttamam. Lord Himself says, a person who offers the Lord this 9-fold discipline, 9-fold devotion to the Lord, in truth and also in reality, in spirit, he is actually the best educated, the well-educated person. This is my opinion. So Lord Krishna Himself said in the Bhagavata Purana. Now, this is the important difference between bhakti and prapatti. Bhakti eventually leads you to prapatti, self-surrender. But at the same time, some degree of self-surrender is a must, a most indispensable need for anyone even to take to spiritual life. Otherwise, people will feel, why should I spend all the time listening to these old books, old ideas? I could rather attend a management course that may help you to maybe $1,000 extra every month. It's a waste of time. They're wonderful. Oh, if you have enough money, you don't need any more money. You can go for some entertainment. So we feel that way. So unless you have a feeling of self-surrender, Karpanya in RāMANUJA'S language. Karpanya means, these are all of no use. I want something higher. And then you turn to this higher spiritual path. So some degree of prapatti, saranagati, self-surrender, to some higher ideal is a must even to begin our spiritual life. But it reaches its fruition, its final sublime, supreme fulfillment when we actually practice prapatti in our life. So, I shall just have a look at this important verse, because this will be famous when you discuss prapatti or saranagati or self-surrender. Ramanuja is very profound, and his commentary is also very well-known, celebrated commentary on this Sarvadharman Parityajya. So, that verse is the Prabhupada says, Ananyasadhe swabhishte mahavishwasa purvakam tadekopayeda yancha prapattihi saranagati. Vedanta, this is Vedanta Desika. Vedanta Desika is the greatest name after Ramanuja in the Viśiṣṭādvaita tradition. This is Ekena, Sukarena, Avalambena, Aseshapapa Nivritti Siddhehi, Anandehi, Duskarehi, Vilambakaribihi, Pratyegapava Nibbahanehi, Bhaktiyogarambhamakada, Sambhadanasya Ashakyata, Nimittashokam, Ma Katha, etc. This means you reach here. So, Sarvan Dharman Parama Nisresa Sadhana Bhutan. So that's Ramanuja said. Ramanuja himself says, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Rupan Sarvan Dharman. This is Ramanuja's commentary. So after Vedanta Desika, we are coming to Ramanuja. Of course, the supreme authority is Ramanuja himself. So Vedanta Desika's Talpirya Chandrika and the Gita, some gloss on Ramanuja Bhashya, and also Sudarsana Suri's commentary on Sri Bhashya. So, important canonical works in Ramanuja system. So Ramanuja himself says, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Rupan, Sarvan Dharman. So Sarva Dharman Parityaja, give up, after giving up all these dharmas. What are dharmas? Bhakti Yoga. Various forms of bhakti traditions. Sometimes, technically in the Vedic tradition, the Ramanuja system defines the Vidyas of Upanishadic literature as different forms of bhakti disciplines. Bhrugi Vidya, Varuni Vidya, all these, Dahara Vidya, the Bhuma Vidya. There are different Vidyas, Nachiketa Vidya, in the Upanishadic Vedic tradition. Sometimes they define these are different kinds of bhakti traditions, but if you look at the original Upanishad mantras, they don't appear to be different forms of bhakti disciplines. They are different forms of meditative practices, as Shankaracharya makes clear in his Bhashyas. Anyway, that's a different matter. Though Shankaracharya says vasanas, but not necessarily bhakti, forms of bhakti disciplines as maybe made out by Ramanuja's system. But anyway, Ramanuja's commentary is very, very important, especially when we discuss the Charama Sloka of Bhagavad Gita. So, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Rupan, Sarvan Dharman, Paraman, Nisresa, Sadhana Bhudan, Madharadhanatvena, Adimatra Pritya, Yadhadhigaram Kurvaneva, Uktaritya, Phala Karma, Kartaptuadi Parityagena, Paritya Jamam Ekam Eva Kartaram, Aradhyam Prapim Upayam Cha, Anusandhaswa, Ramanuja says. So you reach a point where you try your best, but you cannot practice Karma Yoga. Sincere desire to meditate and pray, but mind won't allow you. A sincere desire to practice Karma Yoga, but mind is not willing to cooperate. Or maybe there are circumstances which make it impossible for you to move 1 inch forward. You feel your life has come to a dead end. There is no further progress possible. It comes to such a state, technically speaking, from a purely psychological angle, there are 2 options. Either you practice, there are 3 options. Either you practice Sharanagati and open the straight road leading to spiritual liberation. One. The other one is, one may go insane. Because you want to change, you are not able to change your way of life. The third dangerous possibility is, one may continue the same old lifestyle because you give up the effort completely. So, at this stage, if that person, the spiritual seeker, is very pure, like this hunter we talked about, stories vary from place to place. You can find something very interesting. In India, you find the same kind of stories can be found in different regions of the country with minor differences. So, if a spiritual seeker can practice total purity of mind in word, thought and deed, and he surrenders himself to the Lord and His will, then that will be opening a new chapter in his life. It will have a transformative effect on his entire life. So that's the greatness of this particular discipline. This is, Vedanta says, Suduskarena shoched yo yena ishtaheduna sasadasya Anumeva iti charamasloka sangraha. That means, if a person, if a spiritual seeker, if he grieves, feels a lot of inner sorrow, because he cannot employ the means, he cannot use the tools at his disposal to move forward towards God. He wants to do, but he's totally helpless. So what happens, then God himself becomes for him the tool, the instrument by which he will reach his destination. So that is the spiritual significance of this ideal of prapatti or sharanagati. So we should always remember, it is not an ideal or a doctrine or a concept. Though you find in the normal lectures on RāMāNUJā'S philosophy, the traditional, what you call Sampradayika RāMāNUJā, they will say, you practice Agijanyam and Ananyakatitvam and you get prapatti. It is just like going to Trader Joe's and buy certain items. It's not possible. It's a state of human evolution. It is not making a statement, well, I surrender myself to you. If it is sincere, from that moment onwards, it becomes impossible for you to do anything wrong. Psychologically, it becomes impossible for you to do anything that is harmful to your spiritual life. I cannot explain this more than or better than by giving the illustration of one very important householder devotee who is an important figure in the Sri Ramakrishna tradition, Viśiṣṭādvaita Ghosh. It's a classical example. In many ways, he resembles some of the Christian mystics. St. Francis of Assisi was a soldier. Augustine was certainly, if not not an ideal spiritual seeker. St. Paul again was a different person, not a spiritual person. Or St. Augustine, or St. Francis of Assisi. There are many like that. On the other hand, you find a 17th century Italian mystic, St. Joseph, who was almost illiterate, though not really illiterate, but not a learned person. But he, because of his purity, strong faith, he became a great saint. Others, there are a lot of faculties, physical, intellectual faculties, but they had many unspiritual aspects about their character. But then there was a sudden transformation and they practiced this self-surrender. I'm giving examples from Western tradition because in Indian tradition you find hundreds and hundreds of examples. In almost every province of India you find, every region. So, Viśiṣṭādvaita Ghosh is a classic example. He was a bohemian, profligate, a drunkard, and a genius. The greatest name in the history of Bengali theatre. The one who actually, he is a pioneer in the tradition of Bengali drama and plays. So he was a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, but he was not willing to accept. Always drunk, not conscious of where he is going to sleep and when he is going to get up. He came to Sri Ramakrishna. And he was sincere. And Sri Ramakrishna asked him, well, the first thing to do was to make him give up his alcoholism. But Sri Ramakrishna told him, but to begin with, he told him, you take the name of the Lord in the morning and evening before going to bed. But then he said it's not possible for him because, he was a drunkard. A drunkard and also a great mystic. They transcend time and space, everything, So this man told Guru Maharaj, Sri Ramakrishna, he can't do that because he doesn't know where he's going to sleep, when he's going to get up. He was sincere. He didn't want to say, I will do according to your instruction. He said it's impossible for him. Then Sri Ramakrishna asked him, at least once in your lifetime? No, he can't do that. He said no. Then Sri Ramakrishna asked him to practice Sharanagati. The technical language used was giving the power of attorney, mean total Sharanagati, self-surrender. He was a drunkard, a bohemian, but he was very sincere. So once he did this self-surrender, Sharanagati, it became psychologically, physically impossible for him to drink again. He gave up alcohol and eventually he led a good life. He became a great saint. So, anyone who can practice total sincerity and honesty, then the split second practice of self-surrender is enough, because that's the beginning of a new life at the end of the earlier life for such a person. So that is one, that is the real self-surrender. Then there is another self-surrender which I mentioned earlier, that we normally practice at the beginning of our spiritual life. When we practice Bhakti Yoga, then also we actually believe in the reality of God. Otherwise you cannot read a holy scripture, you cannot do puja, you cannot practice any rituals. You cannot do karma yoga even without some belief, some kind of self-surrender. That is self-surrender property as anga, means as a sadhana, as a means, as a method. The real self-surrender is angi. Angi means the real thing of which bhakti is only an anga or a part. That's the idea behind. Now we will take up another very, very important, relevant subject. How does such a man live in this world if he has practiced this self-surrender? So, the practical advantages. One thing, he will be totally free from any kind of sorrow, worry, anxiety, complaint, delusion, depression or anything. Because whatever happens, he interprets as a gift coming from God. Pain and pleasure, suffering or enjoyment, everything is coming from the Lord. So actually he starts practicing an equanimity of mind, which is not different from the equanimity of Viśiṣṭā prajñā mentioned in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, or Jivan Mukta in the Advaitic tradition, somebody who has realized that Brahman is only reality and in his true nature he is not different from Brahman. That is Jiva Brahmaikya. Now, an Advaitin who has become a Jivan Mukta, liberated even while living, to the realization of Jivan Mukti or Moksha, that person also will have the same equanimity of mind. He doesn't think it's coming from God or not, but it's all impermanent. Good and bad, pain and pleasure, all these are part of the game of life. The world is like that. He doesn't expect anything permanent from this impermanent world, which he considers mithya. So that's why I mentioned earlier, at the experience level, Advaitic, the supreme Advaitic experience and Prapatti are the same. Remember, only at the experience level. From a spiritual perspective, there is no difference. From a dialectical perspective, from a metaphysical perspective, from a doctrinal perspective, there may be differences. Secondly, he will feel, this is interesting, he will feel very grateful towards those who revile him, who may insult him. This is very similar in some ways, in some what you find among Christian mystical tradition. You find. So they will be grateful to those who may insult them. because by taking all this insult, they think their prarabdha karmas are being exhausted. So there's an old statement, asammana tapo vriddhi, sammanahi tapakshaya. If people go on honoring you, then your austerity, your spiritual wealth will be drained out. Slowly it will decrease if people honor you all the time. So it's always it's always to the disadvantage of those who are insulting you. Again you find suffering for Jesus, everything for Jesus, suffering, the martyrdom idea. That is actually part of this. Of course, Ramanuja doesn't talk about it, but this martyrdom idea you find in many of the Western mystical traditions, in the Abrahamic mystical traditions, So, if somebody criticizes you, gives you trouble, actually, they welcome. But remember, there is a statement in the, I think, the City of God in Augustine. Those who seek unpleasant experiences for others and then thereby they want to benefit spiritually, they are causing spiritual burden to other people. So you provoke a person to insult you, thinking that if he insults you, you will be spiritually benefited. Actually, you are making him a sinner. You are forcing him to become a sinner. You are forcing him to commit sinful deeds. So then the sins will fall upon you back. That's a very funny statement. That's very interesting. But if anybody dishonors you, so then it will be to your advantage. So asammana tapo vriddhi. If somebody dishonors you, then it will be to your advantage, spiritually speaking. If somebody honors you too much, and you also you identify yourself with these honorable things, then slowly a fraction of your spiritual merit they will take, the account will be transferred to their account, advantage. They will be credited to their account. That's the idea behind. So there are many wonderful ideas which are striking resemblance to some of the mystical traditions of Abrahamic traditions. Mostly Jewish and Christian tradition you find. So we'll have interaction now. You are most welcome to ask questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj. Sri Ram, you have your hand up first.
Yeah.
You mentioned that for prapatti, we need to practice sarvadharman parityaja. Namely, the adhikari for prapatti is one who has realized the futility of all other needs. This appears to be similar to the quality of vairagya in Sadhana Chatushtayam.
No. It's different. We should not vaguely compare things and say things are all the same. No, that's wrong. Vairagyam in the Sadhana Chatushtaya Sambhati is a fundamental quality for anyone to practice Advaita Sadhana. It is the fundamental prerequisite in a general way for all spiritual seekers. But this particular doctrine in the RāMāNUJā system, it is intimately linked to devotion, bhakti, as a supreme means for one's spiritual fulfillment. Because it is a state that you reach, you may have practiced bhakti for many generations, many life cycles. In this life, you are born with this idea of total surrender. In the case of Swami Adbhutanandaji, an example, he practiced total self-surrender. So, when he listened to discussions of Upanishads and other scriptures, the meaning became so obvious to him in a way that even scholars won't be able to understand. Because as a result of this self-surrender, his whole mind undergoes a complete transformation. It gets a strong spiritual orientation. Such a mind can easily capture higher ideas. He doesn't have to practice vairagya, not at all. Vairagya will be there in any person. Vairagya means total detachment to worldly things. That will be an integral part of any person who has practiced prapatti. It's called prapanna. That is true, no doubt about it. But vairagyam, non-attachment alone will not make a person prapanna. It is not even enough to be able to practice prapatti. So, prapatti in real practice becomes the natural and only option for a highly evolved soul. That's an important thing to remember. So, such a person, there are many other important things, His mind also will be free from all fluctuations because it is well settled. So, the result of practicing vairagya he will get. But vairagya itself is not prapatti. Prapatti is a far higher principle in devotional philosophy. Vairagyam is one of the prerequisites for you to go to the kindergarten of Advaita sadhana, so to speak.
Is Vairagya plus Ishwar Pranidhana or Bhakti?
Yeah, Ishwar Pranidhana can, of course, can be interpreted as prapatti, but again, it may be the beginning of one's devotional disciplines, Ishwar Pranidhana. It's not prapatti. So you find the prapatti ideal is not entirely a part of Viśiṣṭādvaita system. This prapatti ideal you find in so many of Shankaracharya's devotional hymns. So many. Ananda Lahari, Bhavani Ashtagam, Saundarya Lahari, Shiva Abharadakshama Stotram, Devi Abharadakshama Stotram. Everywhere you find this prapatti ideal. But that is the supreme achievement of devotional disciplines. That's why I mentioned, prapatti is the same as Jiva Brahma Aikyam, the ultimate Brahmajnanam, knowledge of Brahman. It's the same because that's a Brahmajnani and a Prapanna, somebody who has practiced prapatti, looks alike in everything. The only difference is if they start giving a talk, Brahmajnani will tell you everything in this world is related. So you don't worry, you remain detached. A Prapanna, a person who has practiced prapatti, will tell you everything is the will of the Lord. So you remain detached. Same mental equilibrium you find. That's why I mentioned earlier, at the highest level, at the experience level, they are the same. But then again, we are now studying, we are making an elaborate study of a non-Advaitic system of philosophy. So it's my duty to be truthful to the system that I'm discussing now. If I say they're all the same, it'll be untruthful. It may not be sincere to the great tradition that we are discussing now. But again, having said that, you find, this prapatti idea you find in many of the devotional hymns. Not in the Bhasha literature, but the devotional hymns of Shankaracharya. I find. Gadistum Tamega Bhavani. That's how Bhavani Ashtagam ends. Ananya Gaditvam is one of the important requirements of every jiva for practicing prapatti according to RāMāNUJā. Ananya Gaditvam. Not turning towards anyone else as the supreme destination, supreme refuge. So, you find the same.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Regarding the Guru Bhakti, do you have any encouragements or cautions about the better and not so good ways of going about Guru Bhakti in practice? I mean, in concept, no problem, but in practice.
Guru Bhakti.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's true. So, in the Guru tradition, you find a true spiritual seeker should have respect for what he learns from a teacher, guru, and also he should have a great sense of sanctity and sacredness towards what he learns from a teacher. Because even at the academic level, in the ordinary level, empirical level, your sense of identity and your sense of respect for what you learn is intrinsically connected to the person from whom you learn. That is true. So it is intimately connected, but Guru is never a substitute for the Supreme Lord. Not at all. See, Ramanuja himself was taught Advaita by a great professor of Advaita, Yadava Prakasha. But Yadava Prakasha was not actually a true representative of Shankaracharya's Advaita philosophy in his full form. So he was very, very doctrinal. And this happened to many other non-Advaitic teachers who had the misfortune to learn Advaita from the wrong kind of teachers. Because Advaita has got the danger of being misinterpreted to be some kind of a dry, intellectual, life-denying, God-denying, dry intellectual doctrine, which it is not. That's a reality. So this departure from the mainstream Advaita teachings of Shankaracharya, it happened in many places among the scholarly circles. This happened when Anandatirtha, Madhvacharya was learning Advaita from his teacher. So Ramanuja is learning from Yadava Prakasha. So it happened to many, this happened. So Ramanuja openly refuted, he did not refute, he was a very polite, humble man, but he disagreed with his own teacher. And the same thing happened to many others in the subsequent times. They started their own schools. But that doesn't in any way take the greatness of Advaita from it. That doesn't take the greatness, any aspect of greatness from Shankaracharya or his Advaita system. Any system can be misinterpreted. Even the Ramanuja system can be terribly misunderstood. It is being misinterpreted frequently. See, you can talk about prapatti, but you should be somebody like Swami Adbhutananda. Then you become then you see, man like St. Augustine, he had some kind of an experience, he heard some noise, but it was the beginning of a new life in his life. That doesn't happen to most people. It happened. So, that's why Vedantins and Indian philosophers will always fall back upon the doctrine of law of karma and the reincarnation. They will tell you that because of your previous life cycles and spiritual disciplines you may have practiced in your previous life cycles, you became fit for this complete transformation for practicing prapatti in this life. Otherwise it would not be possible. That's how they put it. So logically there is truth in that, at least according to me. So very often Advaita was misinterpreted. For example, Ramanuja and also Yadava Prakasha, Yadava Prakasha also, though he was an Advaitin. So you find they call Advaita as Mayavada. Advaita is not Mayavada. Maya is not a category in Advaita system at all. Maya is just a metaphor that philosopher uses as a term. But Shankaracharya did not say that Maya is some fundamental category, not at all. So people put him that way, and they also call him that he's like Shunyavadins. They say Vainashikas like that, they would tell you. RāMāNUJā'S and Madhvas, they did that. Because they also misinterpreted Advaita. So many fanatical Advaitins also misinterpret Shankaracharya's Advaita and take away from it all his sweet, beautiful, sublime ideas of devotion. They don't refer to it at all. They mostly enjoy the dialectical ideas, and they exhaust themselves by indulging in these dialectical confrontations, for which Shankaracharya is not responsible. Okay. I told you again many times, all the most beautiful devotional poems in Sanskrit language were written by the greatest of Advaitins. And they will tell you Shankaracharya rejected bhakti. So that problem is there, Yeah. Just like suppose you read Kant, Critique of Pure Reason, and you completely ignore the Critique of Practical Reason. And then you interpret Kantian philosophy exclusively on the basis of Critique of Pure Reason. That's absolutely stupid. Because without the Critique of Practical Reason, Kantian philosophy becomes incomplete, becomes lopsided. So this happens. Okay, thank you for the question.
Thank you. Mark, you're next.
Yeah,
Please unmute
Mark, please,
yourself.
Mark, yeah.
Mark, please unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Pranam Maharaj.
Yeah.
This is a little bit off of the subject that we've been discussing tonight, but I'd like to ask you about Kundalini awakening.
Yeah.
I have some friends that want to have me attend a one-day intensive in which the Kundalini is supposedly awakened. It costs $500, and the teacher is not going to physically be there themselves. And I kind of have my doubts, and what I've read from the Holy Mother, when people ask her about awakening the Kundalini, she would say, do japa and meditation, and that it will awaken eventually. It'll awaken in time. It's not like something that's going to happen right away. And I would like to get your opinion about immediate Kundalini awakening in a class, costing $500.
Anyway, I would say nothing about this course that you are talking about, or whether it is, or to what extent it is rational or not. I have no opinion, nothing. Left to myself, I would not spend $500 for this kind of thing. That's all I can say. So, beyond that, I won't go, and I have no opinion on this subject. Thank you for this question. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah.
That's clear. David, your hand is up. Thank you, David.
Hello, Swami.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I'm just thinking, trying to understand, it seems that from what you're saying, that all the paths lead, like including RāMānuja's path, leads to Advaita realization. Do I understand you correctly? That they all, the Madhvas, RāMānujas,
Yeah.
Shankars, they all lead to Advaita realization, not Nubhuti?
Yeah, I'll tell you. So Rāmānuja's system also, at its highest level of prapatti, it leads to a spiritual experience, which is, as an experience, not different from the experience of oneness and unity, spiritual unity and oneness of Advaita. But you may not call it Advaitic experience, because when you use the word Advaitic experience, it has its own definitions, its own methods, because it's a term used in philosophical books. But the spiritual nature, spiritual stature of a person who has realized, please underline the word realized, the truth of prapatti, which is the ultimate road leading to liberation in Rāmānuja system. The spiritual feeling of such a person will be more or less the same as that of a Jivan Mukta of Advaita tradition. That's all I can say. Okay, that's all. Yeah.
Maharaj, thank you for that. Now, I want to ask about Sister Nivedita's name. She's given the name, and that suggests devotional surrender as well.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
can you perhaps expound upon how she lives up to that name so well?
Yeah, actually, it's a supreme example of this self-surrender, Nivedita. See, Nivedita became a totally different personality after coming in contact with Swami Vivekananda. A totally different personality. So, she was a most restless, intellectual, diehard, who used to ask questions to Swamiji, put questions to Swamiji on many, many subjects. But later what she became shows that she was really what her name implies, the dedicated one. It's a great example. The total transformation of the personality. That's an important thing that happens to anyone who practices prapatti or the surrender. And the way they talk and act and behave will undergo transformation. The way they look at the world also will undergo a complete transformation. So this is a very interesting thing about Sister Nivedita. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. Sanjay, you're next.
Yeah.
Namaste, Maharaj.
Namaste, namaste.
My question is, you mentioned about the 9 ways of following bhakti.
Yeah.
That is described in Bhagavata Purana.
Yeah.
My question is, there are so many paths. So when you follow the bhakti path, and there may be the path of the guru, or even whatever we might call it as the Advaitic practice, is it good to follow one path or both approaches? But if you follow an approach and you don't follow it to the full extent, will it have any negative impact?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on those, Maharaj?
Yeah. No, all paths are equally valid only from the highest standpoint, from the state of experience that they all lead you to. But not at the level, not when you look at them as different means, but only when you take into consideration the ultimate destination, the ultimate result of all this. So, having strong faith in the instructions of a teacher, if a person sincerely follows, then his mind also begins to evolve. And these 9 disciplines are recommended as simple methods. But even to be able to practice any of these 9, you need a formal instruction from a teacher. It's an important thing. So, a teacher will give you not only the instruction, but also he will transfer into your personality certain aspects which are absent in your personality, which are necessary for you to pursue that path. So all these can lead. See, Sravanam, Kirtanam. We find great musicians who are singing all their life. You can find some of them composed tens of thousands of compositions. Music just flowed through their personality. Because suddenly they connected themselves to a higher transcendental source of all wisdom and knowledge. There are Tyagaraja, Purandradasa, many. In all traditions you find this. So give you an example. So Sravanam, Kirtanam are examples in this. You hear, you listen to great songs and musical things, and you compose, you sing and all that. And then those who always remember, that That is a higher stage. And then those who spend long years practicing spiritual disciplines in places of worship, those who spend their whole lifetime teaching the ancient scriptures. So all of them, all these practices at some stage take a spiritual seeker beyond the empirical. So each of these 9 parts is equally valid. Actually, these are mentioned here, recommended here as different ways by which you can connect yourself to the spiritual source, the original source. Any of these can, okay. If you go to a temple, if you are a priest, if you are a musician, if you are somehow employed in some kind of activity in social life, karma yoga, then you can think of Lord and do your work, whatever work that may be. And also one day you can listen to these hymns, that's also one way. So all of this can be practiced. In fact, all the possibilities of connecting our mind to the transcendental spiritual source are implied in this sloka. Sravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pada Sevanam Archanam Bandhanam Dasim Sakhyam Atma Nivedanam. So 9, Navadha Bhakti. That's the idea.
Because the people recommend chanting Vishnu Sahasranama every day at least once. That's the Kirtana part.
Yeah.
So if somebody is chanting every day Kirtana, Vishnu Sahasranama, for some reason, if he doesn't follow that for a few weeks or a few months, will that have a negative effect? But that's kind of the way my question was.
I mean, after you practice for some time, then you stop practicing, so it can create some problems. That's what you mean?
Yes.
Now, this question arises only before you actually enter spiritual life. So this is a very important, this is a big problem in all traditions. So, most of the religious traditions, they force some do's and don'ts on the practitioners. That is at the religious level, the hierarchical level. The priest will tell you, you didn't practice, chant Vishnu Sahasranama for 3 months. So you may have to do some puja or something, it may cost $150. So you can do that and then you can have penance. Actually, this happens in all traditions. That is totally unspiritual. So that's the difference between religious and spiritual. At the religious level, you did something wrong because you forgot it, or you didn't do that, so the big problem waiting for you. That is not spirituality, it is religion. A religion is a man-made structure. Do's and don'ts. Spirituality is different. So those who have got a spiritual approach, they are the least worried about those things. Absolutely no worried. Normally people become worried. Oh, some stars are against you, some astrological things are not in your favor, so you have to do these are all religious doctrine, not spiritual doctrines. This you find everywhere. The church also wanted money for it to survive. So they're laying on the hand all day. So Hindu priestcraft also didn't spare the hapless people, gullible people in all traditions. But at least they didn't do any harm, nothing violent. But in some tradition that problem also is there. So, but I tell you one thing, one should not worry too much about this. On the other hand, suppose you don't have money, $100 to spend for this sort of penance, then the mind tortures you. I don't have $100, so I have to do this. Then you say, you just 1 minute you pray to the Lord, the problem solved. That is spirituality. But you worry and you lose sleep because you are not able to perform a ritual costing $100. That is religion. Religion is subservient to spirituality. You should practice charity. That's true. You should practice compassion for helping others, everyone. There's nothing. You should practice rituals. They are very good. Rituals do have their significance. Rituals are important, they do have a significance. But remember, whenever it crosses the boundary and becomes doctrinaire, then it becomes unspiritual. That's the idea behind it. Without rituals, spiritual values also cannot survive. Not because rituals are the custodians of spiritual values, but because rituals are necessary for the common people to practice some values in life. Look at the Catholic Church. Many of the great teachings, the theological classics, the music, the art, the painting, the sculpture, all these are contributions of the Catholic Church. Remember? But you can communicate with your God in a cave, fine, no problem. But if you should be like a Ramana Maharshi, before that, you don't practice doing it. You go crazy. If you become a Ramana Maharshi, you don't have to go to a temple. So, temples, rituals, establishments, organizations do have their significance. Because they enrich society and human civilization, which in some ways promote spirituality, no doubt about it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
I don't see any further
thank you.
questions. I'm sure there are questions, but I just can't see them
Okay, thank
online
you.
or
So they are most welcome to ask those questions in the next session. Okay, thank you. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Pranamastu. Namaskar.
Recording stopped.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you didn't ask any question, Saugada. Okay.
There were many pranams online.
Yeah, okay,
Maharaj.
namaskar.
Many. No, much gratitude.
Namaskar, namaskar, namaskar.
Wonderful.
Yeah.